Let's talk about Halloween Horror Nights. Happy hauntings, cretins, season spookings, creeps. My name is Chris. I am the only person talking horror on the internet. So, giving you all a heads up over the next couple of months, I will still talk movies, but my focus is going to shift slightly to talking haunted attractions. I'm going to be visiting them, I'm going to be telling you all about them. I've probably done about 75 haunts over 18 different states at this point. My single year record was last year, where I did a total of 15 over 10 different states. I only covered about 5 of them on this channel, but I did write out what I wanted to say to you about all the remaining 10. It just seemed silly posting those in January when you can't go to them for another 9 months. We need to go back. I need to tell you about all the places that I went last year. So without further ado, let's talk Halloween Horror Nights 2024. Watch to the end for my ratings in both individual fields and my overall score. And yes, this year's event will be different, but there is still usable information here because there's plenty that carries over, at least in regards to how things work and the quality of the experience. That makes sense? Cool. So I drove myself down from New Jersey to Orlando, Florida to meet with my dude T-Watches a Scary Movie and some of his friends, where we attended the 33rd Halloween Horror Nights. Halloween Horror Nights is perhaps the biggest and most successful annual Halloween attraction, taking over Universal Studios from 5 p.m. onward for a couple months out of the year. And while its original houses always offer something fun and something unique, it's really the licensed properties that draw Fright fans from across the land, allowing them to immerse themselves in the worlds of their favorite horror films. So last year's licensed properties were A Quiet Place, Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, Insidious The Further, and Universal Monsters Eternal Bloodlines. The Orlando version typically has 10 houses, and I personally feel that half of those should be licensed properties. It's not that I have anything against the originals, I just can get original concepts locally and for far less than it costs to travel to Orlando and go to a theme park. I like A Quiet Place, I like Insidious, neither are headliners in my opinion. Ghostbusters could be a headliner, but Frozen Empire was straight awful. And as far as the Universal Monsters house goes, that house supposes what select characters would look like in a different setting. So I don't know how much we can really count that as licensed, right? Like modern mullet Dracula buying a counterfeit Labubu from a Manhattan street vendor isn't exactly a licensed property just because it's Dracula, right? So, opinion, it was really kind of 3 licensed, 7 original. So let's count those down from worst to best. In 10th place was the Museum Deadly Exhibits. I'll be honest with you, I can tell you about gags that happened in the Halloween Horror Nights houses that I went to back in 2017. But 10 months removed, I had to go back and look this up because I had zero recollection of walking through this house. The story was that a stone that was cleverly called the Rotting Stone was causing people and things to rot in a museum. The creatures were really just muck. It was kind of lazy, kind of uninspired, and kind of entirely forgettable. Next. 9th place, Goblin's Feast, was a tavern where goblins, hobgoblins, orcs, and witches were having a feast, and you are on the menu. This shit was just spooky Shrek. If Shrek 5 was a remake of Troll 2, that's what Goblin's Feast would have been. If you told me that this was the 5th licensed house, but DreamWorks said that it was too spooky and it would damage the image of Shrek so that they just had to call it something else, I would totally buy that. On to the next. 8th place, Universal Monsters Eternal Bloodlines chronicled a tag team match between Van Helsing's granddaughter and the Bride of Frankenstein, taking on Dracula's daughter and a she-wolf. And there's Egypt. I don't know. Whatever. Remember the movie that this shit happened in? Of course you don't, because it doesn't exist. Licensed name, not a licensed house. I did appreciate the story being told in overhead narration as you walked through, because I liked the effort of a story existing. And I was down with a female-led house in the gothic setting, but it felt like there were either spans of nothing or it was just kind of understaffed. This bloodline was far from the ones. That's a wrestling reference if you don't get it. Sorry, I know that wrestling has no place in Halloween Horror Nights. Or does it? On to the next. In 7th place, Triplets of Terror was the goriest house. In the vein of House of a Thousand Corpses or Texas Chainsaw Massacre, it introduced us to the Barmy triplets, who were celebrating their birthday by recreating their family's murders. This one felt the most like a concept that your local haunt would do. It was fun, but somewhat sterile when you consider what they're going for versus what you get. That dirt floor that you get in rural Ohio just feels more apropos. In 6th place, I was literally giddy getting to walk into Ray's occult books for Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. Absolutely captures the imagination of somebody who's been watching these things since I was like 5 years old. And the house having small references to other films in the series like the pink slime dripping down a sewer wall, terror dogs, and Vigo the Carpathian popping out for some people, which T-Watch is a scary movie, unfortunately missed and was very upset about. That was all nice, and I loved that they figured out how to do the proton streams, but my opinion, there was too heavy an emphasis on the Ghostbusters as opposed to the ghosts. We should be walking through as the Ghostbusters, not watching them as like some awkward third party. On to the upper half. In 5th place, Major Sweets Candy Factory presented something like Willy Wonka meets Cooties, where candy causes kids to go mad and start killing. The dark humor and leaning heavily into the hokey concept made this one an absolute delight. My only quip was that it probably was the shortest of all of the houses. I really wish that it was longer. On to the next. In 4th place, 2024's headliner, A Quiet Place, had a very unique take, as you have to remain quiet in that universe. And people mostly instinctively adopted that as they entered the house. So with the soundtrack to that house mostly having some kind of like white noise and some distant transmissions, when it gets loud, it's very jarring. Downside was that the Death Angels, that's the creatures in that universe, the Death Angels were all basically animatronics. And that largely made me wish for a Quiet Place house that was done by an independent company that asks you to sign a waiver for hands-on. Because can you imagine just being ripped from your group for being too loud? Incredible. Still one of the better houses and a fun one to live in for a few minutes. On to the next. On the scarier side, Monstrous, Monsters of Latin America, explored lesser-known cryptids from, you guessed it, Latin America. I liked the fact that they went cultural. I liked the stuff that I had not heard of. I liked that they were respectful to it and they told them as the scary stories that they were intended to be. But for me, I was a smidge disappointed that neither La Llorona nor El Chupacabra showed up. In 2nd place overall, exploring all 5 films, Insidious the Further was the scariest of the 10 houses. The opening of walking beneath Dalton's illustrations as you approach a giant red door, seriously, it was like 20-foot tall drawings, and Elise was providing narration. It was inspired, to say the least. Yes, we got the bride in black, we got the old woman, we got the lipstick-faced demon, and yes, they play tiptoe through the tulips, but the environment just kind of felt somewhat lacking. The concept of the Further is so interesting, and you can expand on that, absolutely, but it largely felt like this was just an attic where some characters pop out. Plus, I personally think that there's a lot more lurking in the Insidious franchise than there is lunging. Had they presented 9 out of 10 scare actors as doing something removed from you, that 10th actor that actually does approach you would be far scarier than having all 10 just jump at you combined. On to the next. The best house of last year was Slaughter Cinema 2. This presents as a drive-in movie theater, and as you enter behind the screen, you walk through your own drive-in movie marathon. Not all of these were hits. The Jester section was just a clown house, and I gave 0 fucks about the cowboy stuff. But Heavy Metal Hell 3D was as close as they've come to Return of the Living Dead, which I feel like they wanted to do. A lot of the merch looked very Return of the Living Dead last year. Killer Kringles gave us the Santa slasher that will never get its own house unless they start running a Christmas event, which they absolutely should and maybe will be planning planning for like the Las Vegas and Chicago locations. Mummy Strippers was just the right kind of campy, and Blood and Chum will have me eternally wondering if they just repurposed the retired Jaws animatronic for this house. This was great all around. I hope that Slaughter Cinema 3 is a house in a year that I am able to attend. Yep, Original House was Universal's best of the year. There were 5 scare zones last year. They were Duality of Fear, Torture Fair, Swamp of the Undead, Demon Queens, and Enter the Blumhouse. Blumhouse was the only licensed scare zone, and it featured Mithrigan and The Purge. I wasn't terrifically impressed with any of the scare zones Blumhouse included. They were mostly just people walking around in costumes in ill-placed non-sets. I have seen much better from them in the years past. There was a live horror-themed circus that we didn't get to go to, and a series of rides that I did not go on. Not a ride guy. I am, however, a food guy, and that goes double when we are talking spooky food. And Universal is either kind or conniving enough to make specialty food items themed to the licensed properties so that I have to try them. So from the Ghostbusters menu, there was Slimer's Korean corn dog. This was a Korean cheese dog with Fritos, Cheetos powder, ghost pepper, mozzarella, and sage derby cheese. On a scale from 1 to 10, this was a 10 as an idea. Slimer eats the hot dogs in the original, and the sage derby cheese was chosen because it melts down into a green sludge. It was a 5 for brand representation, as there's really not something that's instantly recognizable about it. You get it, but you don't get it just by looking at it. It was maybe a 6 for taste. I love a hot dog as much as the next guy, but the coating was dry and they used those bologna tasting hot dogs, like Ballpark or some shit. I can't stand that shit. All in all, it kinda made me wish that I had gone for a Stay Puft S'more instead. From the Quiet Place menu, I grabbed the wooden board eclair. This was a spicy dark chocolate pastry cream filled eclair dipped in ganache and topped with a bloody chocolate plank. This was maybe a 7 as an idea. The eclair or the chocolate bar alone would have sufficed. I don't think we needed both, as it was awkward eating them together. It was a 10 for branding, as I don't think that you could interpret this as anything but a Quiet Place. And it was maybe a 6 for taste. I would have gone maybe an 8 had they not been stored in a chafing dish that allowed for condensation to collect at the bottom and slop them up. I wish that I had gotten literally any other item, but this was the viral thing, and I don't look at shrimp and corn chowder and think, oh, that's a Quiet Place. From the Insidious menu, I got the Last Key Cake Pop. This was a red velvet cake pop with a chocolate key. I don't know, the idea is like maybe a 3, I guess because it's red. Brand representation is like a 4 because it's red and it's got a key. Taste was like a 4, shit was dry. It's the last thing that a cake pop should be. I didn't even want it, I wasn't even hungry at the point when I got it. I just wanted to taste it so that I could say that I tried all 3 menus and tell you about it 11 months later. What should I have gotten? Again, literally anything else on the Insidious menu. Or just stick to the pizza fries, those are always delicious. Or if none of that floats your boat, there's like 500 other food stands. Eat whatever you want. Likewise, there's like 500 merchandise options. I was happy to grab this shot glass. You see the Return of the Living Dead stuff all over that. And I also grabbed this magnet, adding both to my collections. And yes, they've sat in this bag for the past 11 months with my intention of making this video. But whatever else you're into, they probably have it. I nearly bought this Insidious shirt, but yeah, it's the most Darth Maul that the lipstick-faced demon has ever looked, so that was an unfortunate pass. There's plenty more that I could talk about, but a lot of you are already going to the 2025 edition of this, so let's just move forward into the breakdown. So scariness is probably like a 4.5 out of 10. You have to understand that Universal is not looking to give an 8-year-old nightmares because they want them to have a good time and they want them to beg their parents to come back. Similarly, you're moved along too fast to really let dread sink in. Fun factor is an unquestionable 10 out of 10. You are at a fucking theme park. The best theme park that does this. If you're not having fun, that shit is on you. Originality is maybe a 7 out of 10. Licensed houses are not an experience that you can have elsewhere, and the chances that they took on the original houses like Monsters of Latin America and Major Suites were fun and welcome. Storytelling is maybe a 5 out of 10. With the licensed houses, they do a very good job of immersing you into these worlds, but if you're not familiar with these properties, I question how effective they are. With the unlicensed, it's largely on-theme stuff to look at. All right, performances are like a 3 out of 10. And I hate doing this. And I don't blame the scare actors. I have nothing but love, respect, and appreciation for all that you do. But there's little more than lip-syncing a line or lunging at someone that's required of them. They are doing a 10 out of 10 within a performance that only requires them to be at a 3. Does that make sense? I trust that they could and would do so much more if it was allowed of them and if they had the time. But if all you have is 8 seconds of interaction as someone walks past you, all that experience is going to be is boom. Sets are a 9 out of 10. You're dealing with a professional movie studio here that starts work on these as soon as the prior year ends. Need I elaborate more? Accommodations, 10 out of 10. I honestly don't know what else could be asked of them. From food to shows to merch to rides, there's nothing that you can't do. We were there for over 8 hours and we didn't do everything. All right, value is 3.5 out of 10. My single weekday October 3rd ticket after tax ran $88.46. But if you have ever been, you know that if you don't have a fast pass, you are not getting to every house. You may not even hit half of the houses. A fast pass ran me $223.64. Parking was an additional $40, making that a grand total of $342.10. That's for just me before food, lodging, souvenirs, and travel. Now at roughly 8 hours of entertainment, it's roughly $42.76 per hour if you do the math. That's not bad, especially considering that there's licensed properties involved. But I do feel that if you are paying to go, you should be able to see everything in a single visit without having to tack on a fast pass. And that's just not happening. I'm not saying don't go. Go. I'm not saying that I won't go back. I'm probably going to be going this year. I'm just saying that this shit doesn't come cheap. Overall, and this is not an average of those ratings, Halloween Horror Nights 2024 was a 7.5 out of 10 haunt. You'll pay out the ass for it, but even with a somewhat lackluster slate, still worth every penny. Now you guys know that you gotta go follow my buddy T Watches a Scary Movie. He does horror content as well. I think he's really great at it. I'm even in a couple of his videos, so if that's a thing for you, it's bonus Chris content or whatever. So there you go, cretins. That's gonna do it for today, creeps. I'm gonna be back in a couple of days or so with another haunt review, this time from one that I saw in Louisiana last year. But for now, do all these things. Let me know if you've ever been to Halloween Horror Nights and if you're going this year right over here. And as always, this is all just a matter of opinion. Go there yourself, make your own decisions, remain critical, support haunts, support horror.